Welcome in everyone to another episode, live edition of the Seahawks or Hawks Eye State of the Seahawks / Seahawks pregame show. So it'll be me and Mookie Alexander tonight. Mookie's back in the house. We're doing State of the Hawks, which is our bi-weekly segment show on here with Mookie, as well as our live pregame show for this week. The reason why, fortunately, it could have come out on Friday, but it is my birthday on Saturday, so I will be out Friday night with, so I won't be able to give you guys the live Seahawks pregame show on the Friday. Mookie, how you been, man?
I've been doing a lot better than the last week. If you read my social media, but if you haven't, no worries. The big thing, of course, with the last couple of days is that we get to celebrate a Seahawks win. And it was an important win too. Like 0-2 wouldn't have been like the end of the season by any means, but the way that they were able to get off the canvas after essentially knocking themselves down in the first half against Pittsburgh, the way that they handled Pittsburgh in the second half, I thought was big. And now you have a big 2 games in 4 day stretch coming up with New Orleans on Sunday, and then a quick turnaround to Arizona on Thursday. Like if they end this month 3-1, and maybe in first place in the division, I think that's about as good as you could have asked for when you looked at the schedule way back in May.
I couldn't agree more with you, Mookie. The team definitely showed a lot of resilience against the Steelers, and it'll be something that, we'll have to look and see if they can do continuing going forward. But before we get into the State of the Hawks, before we get into the rest of this pregame show, everyone, please, I am so close. I am I think less than maybe 30 subscribers to 1,000. So if you haven't already and you enjoy this content, please click that like, subscribe button. Click the notification as well so you never miss these shows. I've got a lot of content coming out. It's so much so that I've got Mookie reeling sometimes with how much I'm putting out and such. But before we get into our discussion for tonight, guys, we will get to it after this. I got to say, I love that opening, Mookie. My friend did a really good job on that, and we're going to get a couple more coming in. But, Mookie, let's do this opening kickoff. Let's kind of set the stage for the pregame show tonight. Seahawks 1-1. We avoided the lovely 0-2 start that only 9% of teams can actually make the playoffs after starting a season that way, so that was really key. However, we're hosting an 0-2 Saints team. What have you seen so far from the Saints that gives you any sort of indication they may be up for this challenge of coming into Lumen Field and playing against Seattle?
Well, the Saints might be 0-2, but they've been competitive against NFC West rivals. So they took Arizona to a 20-13 game, and they even held the lead briefly, and it came down to the last drive. Juwan Johnson had a game-tying touchdown ripped away from him at the last second on a pass from Spencer Rattler. And then against San Francisco, and I know that the 49ers are steadily running out of players, to the point where they probably could sign Tim Rattay as backup quarterback because they're just that banged up. But they were able to play them to within 5 points, and it wasn't like the Niners were missing literally everybody. They still had Juwan Jennings score a pretty critical touchdown in the fourth quarter. Fred Warner, of course, was his usual amazing self, but New Orleans was down by 5. They had a chance to go for the win, and then kind of similar to what happened in the Seattle game, it was unfortunately for the Saints, right tackle gets beaten badly, not by Nick Bosa, but by Bryce Huff, and it leads to a strip sack of Spencer Rattler. Ball game, it was 4th down, so it didn't matter whether or not the Saints recovered the ball. It was going to be a turnover either way. So, but New Orleans, I think they're worth respecting as let's face it, they're not going to be a playoff team. They're not very good. But they aren't rock bottom bad. At least I don't think, because one important distinction to make with their 0-2 stars, both games were at home. So now you get to be on the road, hostile environment. Spencer Rattler's still a very inexperienced quarterback, and the next win that he has as an NFL starter will be his first. But a team that has Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave on it on offense, and then on the defensive side, you still got Cam Jordan there. So, and I think Demario Davis is still kicking around. So the Saints still have some familiar names. And I got to say that their defense has been all right, at least through these first 2 games. And then Rattler himself, his numbers aren't spectacular. His completion percentage is really good, but and his depth of target isn't amazing. They're not an explosive offense, but Rattler has looked to me a little bit more competent and a little bit closer to what I thought his ceiling could be than what we saw for stretches of last year. So yes, the Seahawks are going to be pretty sizable favorites against New Orleans, but I don't want to use the term trap game, but this is very much one of those games where if you're not careful, then this is the Giants last year all over again. So let's not repeat history here.
So what I'll do for everyone that's in the chat and coming into this, I want to kind of get your guys' quick thoughts on this, because is this a trap game for Seattle? We've seen these games before for the Seahawks where we're flying high after a really solid win. We come in versus a opponent we should, on paper, be able to beat. We look, the Cardinals beat them, Mookie, to your point. The 49ers have beat them with a backup quarterback in Mac Jones. We seem to be healthy. I think the injury report might scare some people tomorrow, post Mike McDonald's comments on Monday, that we saw some guys maybe got more nicked up than they thought. And then we saw some guys get brought into, the VMAC today for workouts and such. But I'll ask you guys, the listeners, the viewers, is this a trap game for Seattle going up against the Saints? We'll get to that later on in the Q&A portion, but I want to get your guys' feelings as well outside of from Mookie. I don't think it is, because I think, Mookie, for me, when I look at trap games, I always look at teams that have really good offenses and suspect defenses riding high, coming in and playing that team that could potentially give them that trap game. And when I look at Seattle, it's almost the opposite. Our offense is getting going, which is great, but we already have, in my opinion, I'd say it's between us and the Chargers right now for top defense in the NFL in a lot of areas, overall team defense. And I look at that Saints O-line and I go, I don't know how they block our defensive front right now the way that it's playing. Spencer Rattler's, a quarterback I liked coming out of the draft process a few years ago, but at the same time, I look at it and I go, I don't know how he's going to handle the noise. It seems like, from a lot of our viewers that were at the San Francisco game, that the noise is coming back to Lumen. The 12s are coming back to Lumen Field and making an impact. And I don't think the Saints fan base travels nearly as well as the 49ers, because it's not that close of a trip. So I think there's a lot of factors that are going against the Saints in here, but I want to get everyone's thoughts on that. Let's move into one of the segments, our sub show here, Mookie, State of the Hawks. So 2 weeks are down. I'm going to ask you this. What has impressed you the most so far about Sam Darnold in this Clint Kubiak system?
That he's getting the ball out on time. I mean, his sack rate's pretty low. He's had, 3 sacks against? And one of them, I think, was a completely blown protection. They're going to have to do a lot better job as far as picking up these stunts and blitzes, because teams are just going to continue to exploit that. But he's getting the ball out on time. He's generally been pretty accurate. He has he put the ball in harm's way. I don't really think he did in the 49ers game, but he definitely was chancing a few in the Pittsburgh game, and that led to a bad interception. Another one that was unlucky to be tipped and picked, but also one that, it was just a mess from the start, and it wasn't all on him. Robbie Utes ended up having to block at least one of 2 unblocked Pittsburgh players, and he got neither. So that killed the play right there. So I like his deep passing. So what impresses me the most, really, if I could look at it from a larger perspective, is his chemistry with JSN. I think that his chemistry with Smith-Njigba could be as good as what Russ was with Tyler Lockett and what Geno was with Tyler Lockett. I mean, where everything just meshes so well. And Smith-Njigba, these first 2 weeks, he's done everything but get into the end zone. He has been outstanding. He's second in receiving yards, and the only reason why he isn't first is because Russell Wilson turned back the clock on Sunday against the Cowboys, and Malik Neighbors did whatever he wanted against the Cowboys secondary. Smith-Njigba started the year with back-to-back 100-yard games. He had no 100-yard games in his rookie season, and I think he only had 3 in his second year. So good progress, and it comes down to Darnold being able to find him, not just in short area passing and intermediate, but a couple of those deep shots are going to JSN. And that's not going to be his game regularly. Like, he's not that kind of receiver where, man, he is your go ball type of guy. but that long pass off of the gun play action in the fourth quarter, right before the Walker touchdown, that was one of my favorite plays of the season thus far, because Smith-Njigba is not super open, but he's open enough. And Darnold just put it on a plate for him with Ramsey in coverage and also getting an obvious holding penalty uncalled. But that's been my upside with Darnold, is that his chemistry with the number one receiver looks as good as advertised, because they've been talking about that all offseason. With his chemistry with Cooper Kupp, I think is still a work in progress. But Kupp at least looked livelier in week 2 than he did in week 1. So, yeah, if the Darnold to JSN connection continues like this, I mean, it's going to be one of the top QB receiver combos in the league. I'm not saying that means Darnold's going to have an all-pro year. Could mean JSN has an all-pro year. But I think that at least lays the foundation for the passing game moving forward. That right off the bat, he knows how to find JSN. Kubiak knows how to use JSN. And JSN is getting the ball, and he's making the most of his opportunities.
So just a couple stats here, Mookie, that, I've pulled out of this so far through 2 weeks for Sam Darnold. So obviously 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, all happened in the Steelers game. To your point on that 4th down and 1 call, I hated the call. I didn't like it. I don't like rolling my QB to the left. I don't like a lot of what transpired in that. I don't really put that as much on Darnold as the first one, the outbreaker. I think he was a little late on that throw and also know your personnel. It's Jalen Ramsey. He's going to be able to make a play, but so we'll go with that. He's currently on PFF. He has an 86.8 grade, so take that with a grain of salt. But that's 5th in the NFL for QBs. When he's in the clean pocket, though, he has a 91.2 grade when it's clean. That is elite level quarterback play from a clean pocket. Pressured, 56.7 right now. He was much better, I think, in this game than he was in that 49ers game. We kind of saw that. The thing that I'll say, though, is Kubiak's scheme got much better in this game. There was a 31%, play action on the dropbacks, up from where it was last week. And the completions went up. 75% on play action pass, he was completing the ball. That's kind of the thing you want to see. And then on top of that, quick game to deep shots, they're 4 of 7 on throws 20-plus yards down the field. That's top 5 efficiency. And I think that talks to what you were talking about with JSN. Even Cooper Kupp in this game on those in-breaker routes that he was eating the Steelers' defense alive with that shoot up most of that 90 yards. Those are some really good things. And I'm going to bring up an image here just to show one thing about what I think is impressive with Sam Darnold so far this year, Mookie. And that's in the middle of the field, he's completing almost all of his passes. He's 13 of 17 for anything from 0 to 10 yards for 129 yards and a touchdown. He's 8 for 8 over 10 yards for over 100 yards. And he's 1 of 2 for the deep shot down the middle of the field. That's something we haven't been able to say as a Seahawks organization for a while, that we have a quarterback that can attack the middle of the field that way.
I think, yeah, with Wilson, we kind of know that story, where if it's middle of the field, it's mostly checkdowns and not really the intermediate unless Jimmy Graham is involved. His history with that is well known at this point, and he's been wildly successful throughout his NFL career, even with that area in his game lacking. With Geno, I think they did attack the middle of the field more. I'm not really saying that they did it well, but I think personnel also matters. And having JSN and Cooper Kupp alone, just those two, will help just about any quarterback attack the middle of the field effectively, because they know how to get open. Like, I think of the Titans game a couple years back, where Geno has a big 3rd and 15, and who does he target in the middle of the field? Is JSN. So those two receivers, Smith-Njigba and Kupp, present themselves very well. But with Darnold, I do feel like they have made it a point of emphasis to attack the middle of the field consistently. And we saw that a lot with the targets that Cooper Kupp got. We saw it on the first couple of series where they got Smith-Njigba involved. And then on the touchdown to A.J. Barner, which I think was huge to start the second half. You get a stop on defense, and then you come out, you get an opening drive touchdown to the second half to tie the game. You can see it's a straight drop back pass under center in a goal-to-go situation. And that's, first of all, they hardly did any straight drop back passing from under center with Grubb last year. And honestly, not a lot with Waldron either. But you can see that Kubiak, it's going to be different. And it matches what we saw in preseason, what you and I have seen personally in training camp. But for Darnold to look off the safety, kind of freeze the safety, and then fit it with great velocity. Like, so Patrick Queen, I think, was the linebacker coverage. He can't come over in time to get to Barner. And that is a great pass. Barner shows himself to be open right away, and you get yourself a tying touchdown. So those are the type of plays that I believe have been lacking from Seattle's playbook consistently. And then, yeah, you have to consider A.J. Barner as another middle of the field target. Now, he's not loading up on targets at the moment. I think he's only had like 3 over the first couple of weeks. But in the red zone in particular, Barner can also be another guy who can be a middle of the field option. So, yeah, I believe that with Darnold and his middle of the field success, I think that is very sustainable, not just because of him, but also because of the receiving targets he is primarily going to be throwing to.
Johnny comes in here with a really good thing that he'd like to see. I'd like to see Arroyo stretch the field a bit too. That's one thing for me that's still missing is Arroyo stretching the seam and running some more of those vertical routes. I'd like to see Arroyo get more involved in the pass game. He did a little bit this week, but he's such a weapon in the way that they can use him and cause mismatches that, I definitely think that's something that they should start tapping into more. They used Barner well in this game. So, Mookie, my second question for the State of the Hawks part here is how do they unleash this duo of Charbonnet and Walker? Because week 1, it was Charbonnet that looked to be more effective, and everyone wanted to lean on Charbonnet, me being one of them. Now, week 2, we come around, and Ken Walker explodes. Ken Walker looks like the running back from his rookie year, the way he played in the Steelers game. How do they find a way to use both these guys and not have it action where one week we're all like, yeah, Charbonnet is great, Ken Walker does nothing. Next week, Ken Walker is amazing, and Charbonnet does essentially nothing. So how do we find that balance between these two to get them both where they're weapons for this offense?
You know what's interesting about this game is that Walker was the far more effective running back. Charbonnet was under a yard a carry. Now, the last drive didn't help because I think he lost like 6 yards in one play in garbage time. But 15 carries for 10 yards versus Walker having, I think, 13 for 105. But Charbonnet ended up outsnapping Walker. So when Walker was in the game, he was getting the ball, 70-something% of the time. And I believe that a major reason for that is Charbonnet is just a much better pass protecting back. One of the most exciting things you could see, and we could talk about PFF grades all you want, but I think this matches what we see on the field is that when there are extra rushers, and there are frequently extra rushers, especially in third down situations, Charbonnet is picking up the extra rusher and doing so violently and effectively. I don't really think that Walker is the same. I'm not saying Walker's a total liability in pass pro. I think that Charbonnet is just a better fit for those passing situations where they need to have a running back in. But in terms of getting them both going, yeah, I think it really comes down to the snap allocation and kind of getting both guys in a rhythm. But I think it really is matchup dependent. So against the Saints run defense has been all right the first 2 weeks. They got picked on a bit in the Arizona game, gave up a couple of explosives, but the Niners really couldn't do much on the ground on Sunday. So with Walker, I feel like if you can get consistently positive yards, get 4 yards, 6 yards, 11 yards, then I say feed the hot hand. And then Charbonnet can be a change of pace back, especially when they get closer to the red zone, for example. Like you could see Charbonnet's power being more of a factor. So yeah, they've just been unable to have both of them click at the same time. Now, part of it is because they haven't exactly always been on the field every single week because Charbonnet's had a clean bill of health. We know Walker's injury history. But in this instance, we've seen now Charbonnet had a decent game. He just didn't get the ball enough since Seattle didn't have enough plays. And Walker was a non-factor in week 1. And then this week, Walker is the factor. And I thought that was the most spry he's looked too in terms of also breaking ankle tackles. Because it feels like as a rookie and even in his second year, he was doing that, but he was getting caught by ankles or not being able to make guys miss through contacts, in the second level. But Charbonnet can also give you contact breaking runs in either behind the line of scrimmage or preferably beyond the line of scrimmage. But yeah, I'm wondering how often they've considered like a proper 2-back set. So like the old fashioned, we don't see it a lot, and Grubb did this. Split backs, 3 wide receivers, that kind of thing. But Grubb did this occasionally, but it was only ever in short yardage, where they would run like 22 personnel, and you'd have Charbonnet and Walker there, and you would hand it to Charbonnet, or maybe there is an option for Walker to carry it. I don't think they're going to do that, but it might just be a feel-based thing as far as getting them both going, and also just matchup dependent. So Yeah, Amy's saying I'd love to see that. I'm guessing
Yeah.
regarding having both of them in the game at the same time. One alternative would be if one is not being effective in the running game, I think Charbonnet is a better pass catching back or better receiving back. And this does not mean screens. So, like, it can include screens, but ideally, it's none of the nonsensical screens that we have seen for the last however many years of Seahawks football. It's getting them out, lining them out at wide receiver and seeing if they can run any routes or lining them up like traditionally next to Darnold and see, can you run this wheel route? Can you run this chine route? I think that Charbonnet can absolutely do that. And I think Walker can do it too. Walker's shown some good receiving skills as well. I think Charbonnet is more fluid that way. But there's really no great answer that I have. What do you think, Bryce?
I think to your point, Mookie, it is a bit matchup dependent. The one thing I'll say that Ken Walker, two things stood out to me about Ken Walker in the Steelers game. One, he was more patient. That was one thing that really stood out. Like I felt saw the run game so much cleaner than he's maybe seen it in the past couple seasons. And it's also because of continuity on the O-line, the way that we're committed to this style of blocking. This is what we're doing. It's not this mishmash of, well, 1 week we're gap pull and 1 week we're this. Like, yeah, there's those plays are in there, but this is what our base is. This is what we do well. The other thing, because he was more patient, there were a couple runs, especially inside zone type runs, where you'd see that the hole wasn't going to be where he initially thought, and he only made one jump cut and then got north-south again. He didn't make the 2 or the 3 kind of thing he had done in the past, where it was like, I feel he's more, K9 is more reserved now to understanding, like, not every run is to be a home run. Sometimes it's meant to get 5 yards, and that's the design of the run. And that's where I think sometimes we saw with K9, the multiple jump cuts and the really stretching a play out was him trying to, like, I got to hit the home run here and just go, instead of being like, oh, this play is really designed for 5 yards in a cloud of dust. And that's fine. And that's what I really appreciated in this game from him. I think to your point, though, as well, Mookie, is yes, Charbonnet is your passing back. He's going to be in there like on the big post route to JSN late in the game. Who's in there? It's Robbie Utes and Zach Charbonnet on the play action on first down. And those are kind of some things I think we'll see. I think they got to figure out some sort of screen game because we can't not have one if we're going to run the ball effectively. And it should open up. And I think those are two things that, again, our screen game has sucked so much lately because we couldn't run the ball. Running back screens get better when you can run the ball and teams get afraid, especially when you can play action off of them. That's something that'll start to creep up. But, the one thing I'll say is Charbonnet and Ken Walker are almost at 4 yards per carry, both of them, which is something, again, we haven't been able to see. I think K9's at 3.7 yards per carry right now. Charbonnet's at 4.3. That's pretty good yards per carry. That's putting you in at least 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6 on most runs, which is pretty manageable for an offense to stay on time and on rhythm. So, Mookie, the final question I'll kind of ask you here for the state of the Hawks is, where do you see Seattle after now? I know it's only 2 weeks since early. Where do you see Seattle kind of fitting in this NFC West, or not NFC West, but NFC picture right now?
I think we got a pretty clear hierarchy through 2 weeks already. Philadelphia and Green Bay right now look like the class of the NFC. Now, I say that acknowledging that Philly beating Dallas at home, good division win, and then beating Kansas City on the road. So you've beaten the AFC dynasty, the preeminent NFL dynasty of the 2010s, early 2020s. But Green Bay hasn't played on the road yet. Now, Cleveland, they're not going to be all that scared about playing Cleveland. But when Green Bay has tougher games, then we'll get to really see what they're made of in road environments. But Philly, Green Bay, I would include Detroit there until further notice. So, like, any freak out over week one was immediately offset by the fact that I didn't pay attention to the scoreline of that game. And then by the end, I see 52-21 over Chicago. So welcome back, Ben Johnson. So some elements of that offense still work very well, and especially at home. But after that, I think it really is up for grabs. So the NFC South, I think Atlanta is going to be pushing for the division title. And if their defense is any bit as good as we saw on Sunday night against Minnesota, and we know that the Falcons have had a hard time generating any pass rush for forever, then I believe that they're going to be a pretty significant playoff contending team by the end of the year. Tampa Bay is kind of in a similar situation, although losing Kalijah Cansey for the season is a big deal. And they're getting some guys on offense back, but Cansey tore his pec, he's out for the year. but it's hard not to like what Baker Mayfield and that Buccaneers offense manages to do, especially their win against Houston on Monday night, coming back the way they did. You've got Emeka Buka, who's easily going to be an Offensive Rookie of the Year finalist. And then you got Bucky Irving at running back. So they got a talented overall offense. And look out when they get Tristan Wirfs back and they get some of their guys on the offensive line back. So, but Minnesota, I think we got to pump the brakes on them. And you were particularly not high on them. McCarthy's had one good quarter out of 8. It's just that one good quarter won them the game against Chicago. And now he's hurt and he's gone for a few weeks. And you got the remnants of Carson Wentz starting for the Vikings. And I think there's only so much Kevin O'Connell can do when it's 2025 Carson Wentz at quarterback. So the Vikings could drop off depending on the length of McCarthy's absence. And even with him, like what we've seen so far is somebody who is going to need a lot of reps and a lot of game time experience to get better than what we've seen thus far. So the NFC West is going to be a dogfight. Like Arizona and San Francisco are playing each other this weekend. And then the Rams are 2-0, and they got a big game against Philly this Sunday. So Seattle, I would be surprised if they were out of the playoff picture in December. That's kind of my read on it. I think they're going to be still pushing for the division. I picked them to win the division. So I think that assuming that they take care of business this week and then they win the Thursday game, they are really poised to be in the playoff hunt really for the rest of the season, barring anything catastrophic. So I'm not saying they're in Philly's class or Green Bay's class, but I am saying that after that, everything gets bunched up a lot more. And I didn't even bring up Washington, Jaden Daniels getting hurt too. And they haven't been clicking these first couple of weeks, even before he got injured. So I think that Seattle is kind of in that second and third grouping of NFC teams that can threaten a playoff spot or threaten a division title, maybe even win a playoff game.
Yeah, the NFC is kind of all over the place, in my opinion. Like you look, the Eagles are still, in my opinion, the top team. I think the Buccaneers are an interesting team. They, to me, I've said it from the beginning, I view them as the number 2 team. I think Green Bay is pushing there. It'd be very interesting to see those two teams play each other. But yeah, I'm not high on Minnesota. I'm not high on Detroit right now. Detroit's struggling. I think Detroit's got a very tough schedule coming up down the pipe. Yes, they beat up on a bad Bears team. And I think I'm going to be very interested, Mookie, to see how Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams get along. Because I think time's running out on that marriage. And not in the sense that I think Ben Johnson will be out of there soon. I think there may be a chance where Ben Johnson goes, hey, look, I want someone else at quarterback. Because the one thing, and this is what's really interesting about the NFL as a whole, is you're starting to see some of the quarterbacks that live off of extending plays and ad-libbing things struggling with a lot of where these new offenses are going, because these new offenses are kind of going back in time to rhythm and throwing on anticipation and play action and running the ball. Well, some guys can't do that well. They need to be able to be kind of like a free stallion and ad-lib out on the field. Caleb Williams is one of those guys. Johnson was super successful with Jared Goff. Why? Jared Goff was not someone that you were worried about running around in the backfield. It was 1, 2, 3, ball out. Like, I know my progression. I know my read, ball out. And that's why I think you've never seen, a Kyle Shanahan. They tried it with Trey Lance. It didn't work. What did he resort to? Okay, we're going to go with Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy. And, he did really well with Jimmy G. You've looked at Sean McVay. He's never really had a super crazy athletic quarterback in his system. It's always been guys that can play in rhythm and play in structure and get the ball out and know where the ball needs to go that make a lot of these high-powered offenses work. You surround them with talent. So I think Seattle, I picked them to win the division. I picked them to go 13-4. I still think a lot of those options are still out on the table for Seattle. But first off, they have to start winning at home. That's going to be a big key. They cannot keep going down this path of, okay, it's a home game. Like, we're playing almost in an away stadium is how we should play when we're on the road. They play on the road like they should play at home. It's just this weird upside down world thing with the Seahawks. But let's move on, Mookie, to the trenches. Okay, battle in the trenches. How much of a mismatch is Seattle's, and I know it sounds crazy, but Seattle's right side going against Bresee and Jordan there. Jordan being an older player. Breeze's never really, I think it's Bresee or Bresee. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but never really has kind of come to the draft status he was taken at. I think there's a chance Seattle could run all over them on the right side behind Abe Lucas and Anthony Bradford.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's kind of a much needed step down for Abe Lucas, because I feel like to start the new part of your contract with Nick Bosa and TJ Watt consecutive weeks. That's a tough task. And Cam Jordan, of course, is still a very formidable pass rusher, but he's not in his prime, and he's certainly not at the level of Watt and Bosa right now. So I think they can have success running on the right side. The one Saints pass rusher I'd be wary of right now is Carl Granderson. I mean, he's got 3.5 sacks in 2 games. But the Saints defensive line is by no means elite. And there will be opportunities, I think, for Seattle's run game to get going. And Bradford, I thought, was having some good moments as a run blocker. And I'm more curious to see what happens on that left side, though, because that toss to Walker, a short toss, not the outside tosses that have been taken forever and they're not clicking right now, but a short shotgun toss that I thought was a give-up play ends up being a touchdown. Look at how far Gray Zabel is up the field, looking for somebody to block at the 5-yard line, and then look at Cross getting out and taking on blockers as well. And suddenly Walker's got all this space and the runway is cleared for him to land in the end zone. So on the flip side, though, with Bradford and Lucas, I think that they'll get better as a tandem in the run blocking in the run blocking aspect of it. And this is that opportunity. So again, the Saints run defense has held up pretty well through 2 games, but both games are at home. And now you're going out on the road, and you would think that Seattle is going to make it an emphasis to run the ball. Not you would think, you would know. Through 2 weeks, their early down pass rate is 31st out of 32 teams. So they are still going to be committing to running the ball and running it an early down. So this is an interesting opportunity for them as far as kind of imposing their will against I don't want to say lesser team out of disrespect, but a team that is not as potent in terms of their defensive capabilities up front compared to what San Francisco can have, even with all of their changes, and certainly to what Pittsburgh has with Hayward and Watts and Highsmith before he got injured.
Yeah, I look at this and this is a prime opportunity to get even more consistency in this run game and just pound the rock. And the one thing I'll say is I did a film breakdown with Dan Vians. It'll be coming out on Friday, and it'll be on Dan's channel tomorrow for his members only, one of our Hawks film labs. And we looked at some of these explosive plays that Seattle's been able to get these first couple of weeks where they're one of the top teams. I think they're number 2 in the NFL right now for explosive plays behind the Rams. And we were looking at some of the runs. And I think the one thing we got to start looking at when we look at these runs, and if you get access to all 22 film, it's great, is some people are saying, well, Anthony Bradford still looks like he's wandering around aimlessly at points. Well, there's been certain things I've been able to pick up where a lot of this zone blocking is it's almost duo initially, and then it's whoever's got the correct leverage has to let go and move off to the next guy and get the guy that's coming across. And there was a run in particular where K9 made a jump cut. Basically, it looked like it was supposed to be a 33 zone to the left side, and that's just over the left guard's left leg. And basically, he bounced it back inside and went over to the actual 2 hole on the other side and made it a 32 split zone. And part of that was Sundell, when he got his initial block, should have let it go for Bradford to control and move to the linebacker, and that would have cleared the hole correctly for K9. But instead, Sundell held too long. Bradford had no one really to block and had to kind of bounce off of that and try and climb to a Mac, which wasn't in his, forte on that particular play, and it didn't put him in a good position. So I will say I've been actually impressed with Anthony Bradford so far this year. I haven't seen as many gaffes as I've seen in the past where we were like, oh my God, like this is just horrible. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Saints handle that. And so, Mookie, the other thing I'll ask you is, do you expect, so like on the pass rush side of it, Cam Jordan, he's got an 80.5, 8 pressures, when it comes to the PFF side of things. Even Bryan Bresee has the same thing with 75.9 and 5 pressures. Do you expect the quick game to then again be a big factor, quick passing game, I should say, be a factor in the offense on Sunday?
Yeah, that's been the key through the first 2 weeks. And Darnold's PFF grade for that first week, where he was asked to do about as little as possible, confuses me because I didn't think he was that like upper echelon levels of good in that game. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't amazing. But be that as it may, the quick game, I think, is going to be a staple of the Seahawks offense, especially to help the offensive line. Now, interestingly enough, I actually believe that they have held up very well in longer developing pass plays, minus the stunts that they've been struggling to pick up in any little games up front. They've been like having some sort of miscommunication one way or another. But they've held up better than I've expected. So against New Orleans, yeah, you're still going to see some quick game, and guys like JSN and Cup are going to be regulars in quick game, but we're also seeing like even if it's like the fake toss to it was one of Charbonnet Walker, but the fake toss and then Arroyo goes across the formation, and so we saw that play, and we saw that play in preseason, I believe, against Kansas City, but minus the tossing bit. And that's the type of get the ball out in a second and get easy offense, easy yards. And Arroyo had so much space that he got like 20 something yards on that play. So yeah, I anticipate that they're going to continue to have the quick game. I think they're still going to use more play action than they did in week one. Use it about the same rate that they had against Pittsburgh, because I think NFL Pro might have a different play action rate, a different definition of play action in their tracking than PFF might. But 6 of 10 for 137 yards. Yes, he threw 2 picks, but he also had the touchdown to Torrey Horton. So the play action was working for the most part, and they were hitting big plays off of that play action. What I'd like to see them do more is more play action out of gun. So like the Smith-Njigba play, that was the only gun play action I think they've done on the season thus far. But not every PA has to be from under center. Like if you can still get some gun in, I don't expect them to really use pistol with Sam Darnold in the game. Then it kind of mixes things up a bit. But this is going to be an opportunity for Seattle's receivers, I think, to do some damage against the Saints secondary that is, to me, not a strong suit. I think they're very much a work in progress. Isaac Yiadom is back there. You got Kool-Aid McKinstry, but that's hardly an elite secondary unit you're looking at. I think Justin Reed is there from Kansas City. So Justin Reed's there, and he's kind of like your veteran leader. But otherwise, Mac Jones is able to have a very good game against that Saints defense. So I see no reason why the Seahawks can't do the same with Sam Darnold under center and with a healthy set of receivers around him.
I totally agree, Mookie. So let's move on to our matchup spotlight. And for me this week, it's the skill players. We're talking JSN. We're talking the Saints secondary versus, Seahawks receiving core, and even the Saints offensive players in Kamara and Olave. So my first question is, who outside of JSN, Mookie, is most likely to step up in the passing game?
Interesting. In the passing game. So I'm tempted to go. Well, I don't want to overcomplicate it. It's got to be Cooper Kupp. I mean, that game was very encouraging to me because it looked as close as you could get to Rams Cooper Kupp. So 7 catches for 90 yards. No, these weren't super explosive plays deeper down the field, but he moves the sticks. And possession receivers, we know it. We think of Bobby Ingram back in the day. Doug Baldwin, maybe he doesn't like the label, but Doug Baldwin is like an A-plus possession receiver. And Tyler Lockett kind of morphed into becoming a great possession receiver toward the end of his career when he was, losing his speed and not really trying to fight through contact as much. So guys who can move the chains always have value in this league. And Cooper Kupp, I think, is going to have an advantage against that New Orleans secondary just as much as JSN will. I would be curious to see how much more that they're going to use the rookies. And by rookies, I mean just Horton and Arroyo, because Horton also had a really good catch on a 3rd and 11 that he took a shot, and any shot he takes to the knees right now, given what he dealt with last year, I'm wincing. But he was a yard short of the sticks, and they were able to sneak A.J. Barner for the first down. And then Arroyo, he's got his first couple of targets. He had to catch, I think, in week 1, but he had a couple of catches against Pittsburgh. But I'd like to see those two get involved a little bit more, especially Horton as a downfield threat. So, they haven't attacked downfield too much through 2 games. Their explosives have mostly been in the 15 to 25-yard variety. Depends on what your definition of an explosive play is in the passing game, because running game is kind of universally accepted. It's 10 yards and up. But yeah, I think that Kupp is now going to get settled in a bit more. And we're about to see Cooper Kupp kind of take off into what tormented us over the years. Not saying he's going to absolutely hit all those Rams numbers. Like, those days are over. But he is going to be a valuable piece to this offense as we expected. And basically outside of those two, I'd like to see Horton above all else get going.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think Elijah Arroyo might have a very big game in this game because I don't think the Saints have a linebacker or safety that can really play with him and cover him. But here's the other question for this, Mookie, before we finish up the matchup spotlight. What's going to be what's tougher for Seattle, containing Olave or Kamara on this offense?
Probably Kamara, because Olave seems to have like this sort of magnet that allows him that results in some sort of extra force where he gets hit really, really hard and doesn't finish the game. Like I semi-joke, but like it is alarming how often he gets jacked up and gets put into concussion protocol, or at least into the medical tent. So with Kamara, like he is still a super, super two-way back. He had 99 yards against San Francisco on 21 carries. So it does put into perspective a bit how the Saints offensive line was able to attack San Francisco's defensive line in ways that Seattle couldn't. But Kamara is also a very good receiving back. And through these first 2 weeks, like they were able to contain McCaffrey as a runner, did not contain him as a receiver. And then with Jaylen Warren, they contained him as a runner. And I'd say they contained him as a receiver, except for that one play. And that's a big leap I'm making there. But it's like one play busted everything. But Kamara is very capable of doing the exact same thing that Jaylen Warren did, except it would be more than one catch. So I believe it's going to be imperative on Seattle, especially if they're intending to pin their ears back and really go after Spencer Rattler, to take away his safety blanket. Now, Olave might not be necessarily a safety blanket, but I think Kamara is. I think we might see a lot of checkdowns. Yeah.
I agree. You kind of froze there for a second, Mookie, but yeah, no, I agree that the checkdowns is what worries me. And our run defense has been okay, but it hasn't been great the first couple weeks, I'd say. Like it's been good, but I think Kamara could definitely make things a little bit more interesting for sure on how, because he's fast and he's faster than a lot of our linebackers like Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. Yes, they're fast guys, but I don't know if they're up to the speed of necessarily catching Kamara all the time. So it's really going to be, does Nick Eamon-Wari play? We've heard from Mike McDonald this week. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Is Spoon back? Like those are going to be key factors. Like is DeAnthony Bell up for that challenge of being one of the guys that's going to have to potentially, chase down Kamara out in the flat or on a wheel route like we talked about earlier with our guys. So it'll be interesting. But for everyone in the chat, who scares you more? Is it Alvin Kamara or is it Chris Olave? Put your comments in there and we'll get to those. But Mookie, what we're going to do right now is we're going to get to the 3 keys for victory for the Hawks. And, the one thing I kind of want to know before I go into mine, Mookie, what are your 3 keys? Give me your 3 keys initially for this Seahawk victory on Sunday.
All right. First key, score more points than the Saints. Second key. Third key, see step 1. See, of course. Now, the first key, I think, is going to be to rattle Spencer Rattler. I think we saw somebody do that little pun in the comments. Yeah, Johnny A, we need to rattle Rattler. So Rattler has had a really low sack rate, like it's below 5% through 2 games. So he's been looking better than, as I said earlier, looking better than we saw in the early bits of last season when he was kind of thrust into a starting lineup where everybody was hurt. Now he's actually in an offense where people are healthy. So we get to see him maybe in a more comfortable and favorable environment than we saw last season. But I think that they can force Rattler into making mistakes by pressuring him. So you notice in the Pittsburgh game, McDonald made a conscious decision not to blitz Rodgers. He did it, I think, 4 times. And I don't think they really rushed more than 5 at any point. And he was 1 for 4 for 5 yards. They were content to play 4-man and let those 4 be Pittsburgh's 5. And they were doing it more often than not. And even with Spoon and Eamon-Wari out, notice how well Seattle's secondary was holding up. Rodgers was unable to find open guys, and the pass rush was able to get to Rodgers repeatedly and force him into just dirtying the ball or taking a sack. Now, Spencer Rattler, the one thing that is a lot different with him compared to Purdy and Rodgers is his mobility. And when I mean rattle Rattler, I also mean don't have these escape hatches, because I'm not too pleased at how often the Seattle pass rush has lost contain and has allowed Purdy and Rodgers to climb up in the pocket or run forward. Now with Rodgers at 41 years old, not somebody you're worried about gaining a lot of yards. But if Rattler escapes, then he's somebody who can do damage in the open field. So I think that's going to be one key, is to contain, to make Rattler as uncomfortable as possible. Second bit, so the second key, I'd say on the offensive side of the ball, and this is another obvious one, but please, no turnovers. Like, they have turned it over 11, at least twice, 11 times in McDonald's 19 games. So taking care of the ball has been an issue for Seattle. And no, it's not just Geno, of course, because we know Geno had his interception issues last year, but we just saw Darnold throw 2 picks in the Pittsburgh game. And then we had the special teams gaffes and other people fumbling that have led to some of these multi-turnover games. So, like, if you've got an inferior team you're facing, then you do not give them free opportunities. So we look at the Giants game last year, and it wasn't a ton of turnovers, but they're about to take the lead, and DK fumbles the ball, and the Giants get it, and they get a touchdown a couple of snaps later. Like, that's how you let a bad team get back into a game, if not beat you. So it is of paramount importance for them to not screw around with the ball. Like, ball security's got to be much better than it has been in the McDonald era. And then the third key I'd say is, I think, again, special teams is still a bright spot, unexpectedly so. I'm willing to eat some Jay Harbaugh Crow here, because they have been instrumental over these first 2 weeks in keeping themselves in the 49ers game and then kind of flipping that Steelers game. So, like, Jason Myers missing a 36-yard field goal, yeah, that's really on Myers more than anything. It was actually not tipped. So you might have heard it on the broadcast, but they reverted to saying it was just a straight miss. Didn't get a finger on it. But that George Holani play, extremely heads up, and that basically shut the door on Pittsburgh right there and then. And Steelers fans were actually leaving when that happened. A 10-point game with 9 minutes left, and they had seen enough. They were heading for the exits. But also Torrey Horton could make a splash in punt returns. I think he is going to break one. He was really close on his first return. He got out to midfield. And then a second one where I think it was a decent but not spectacular return. But again, having those little edges, especially against a team like New Orleans, I believe that's if they can win the return game, win the field position battle through the return game, then they're going to be in good shape. And if you can force New Orleans into kicking field goals instead of getting touchdowns, Blake Grupe is 2 for 4 from field goals, and he's not a very accurate kicker in general. So I would take my chances, much like with Jake Moody, force them to make a decision. Like, do we want to go for it in like 4th and 6 because we don't trust our kicker to make a makeable field goal? That's the kind of conflict I'd like to see. And unlike San Francisco, I would trust the Seahawks defense to force some turnovers on downs, on 4th down against the Saints offense. So, yeah, those are my 3 keys in general. So, rattle Spencer Rattler. What was the second one? The turnovers. Like, please limit the turnovers. Like, you're not saying you have to force 3-4 turnovers. Just play clean football on your side. And then the third bit, of course, would be the special teams as a whole, continuing to play at a high level, that as surprisingly so, that we've seen through the first 2 weeks.
All right, so those are Mookie's 3 keys, and I'll bring up my 3 keys to the game week. So as you guys all know, I do my 3 keys to victory. So I'm going to bring up my first one, kind of goes off what Mookie talked about. Protect the ball, protect the pocket. When Sam is kept clean, he's at a 91.2 grade from a clean pocket, but that drops significantly to when he's pressured. And he's played well under pressure, but that's where we see the interceptions have kind of creeped up, is when he's got that pressure. The Saints have thrived, generating pressure from both edges. You know, the interior, Cameron Jordan already has 8 with an 80 grade, and they've got Bryan Bresee has got, 5 as well. The Seahawks offensive line, to what we talked about a little bit earlier, they have been inconsistent. The eye test looks really good, but there has been some inconsistent play, especially in the pass pro with Anthony Bradford and Charles Cross. Charles Cross holding up well. Bradford on the other end is at least he's above 40 where he was last year, Mookie. So he's trending in the right direction. And that's the turnover factor. Darnold's got 2 of them. Don't turn the ball over. Keep the ball, force the Saints into them. That's the first key for me. Key number 2 going into this week is unleash the duo. Get Charbonnet and Walker working together. Let these 2 wreak havoc on the Saints' run defense, which is a glaring weakness. They sit at a 58 grade for run defense, which is 23rd in the NFL, and are giving up 4.6 yards a carry. Both of our backs are almost averaging 4 yards a carry. So get them going. Getting both backs going against New Orleans is going to bring that safety down, which then opens up the middle of the field for JSN and the rest of the receiving weapons. And if Seattle controls the ground game, it keeps the Saints pass rush in check and shortens the game against an opponent that already struggles in the red zone, which is something we haven't talked about, Mookie, but the Saints are horrible in the red zone this year. They're just god-awful. And my last one, a little bit different than Mookie's, clamp the playmakers. Stop Olave and Kamara. Let's make sure these guys don't beat us. Don't let Chris Olave be some guy that goes off, or Kamara, where we've seen that in the past where we're doing really good and there's just that one dude that just keeps wrecking things for us. So, and at the last point of this is force Rattler to beat you with the second reads and timing throws rather than letting the stars dictate the offense. Don't let Olave get easy releases or Kamara get checkdowns and break the first tackle. So those are my keys to a Seahawks victory. Mookie, I think they align pretty much with the Seahawks. So I'll ask you this. If Seattle only hits one of the 6 that we've currently listed, and I'll put this out to everybody in the chat as well, Which one of those ones is so crucial that if Seattle hits it, they will get a victory?
I'm biased. I want to say the turnovers bit, but you can still lose a game where you don't turn it over. But basically, we know the Saints' best players on offense are Olave and Kamara. Make other people beat you. And it's sometimes it's easier said than done, but truly, when you're dealing with an inexperienced quarterback, you want to slow down any sort of momentum you could get by taking away his best weapon. So that means shutting down Olave, shutting down Kamara. And then, of course, Rashid Shaheed is the one guy outside of Olave who can really take the top off a defense. It feels like, Rashid Shaheed might have like 30 career catches and like 25 of them are for 50 yards or more. That's just kind of how his playing style is. But absent that, like Brandon Cooks is pretty much past his prime. And then Devon Vele, the 27-year-old second-year player acquired from the Broncos. I mean, he's a decent receiver, but again, nothing that Seattle can't handle. So if the game comes down to Spencer Rattler having to rely on the others, as Shaquille O'Neal loves to say in his NBA analysis, it's all about the others sometimes. They have the others step up. So you like your chances if the Saints have to rely on the others, as opposed to, say, if it's San Francisco at their healthiest, okay, cool, we've shut down Ayuk and Kittle, but one of the others is Jawan Jennings. That's a lot different when you're dealing with a offense like New Orleans that isn't as talented across the board. So I don't even remember New Orleans as backup running back. I think it's Kendre Miller, and he's been in the doghouse before. So, like, you take away their best options, and I think that's really going to create a cascading effect for Rattler where he might just start holding on to the ball too long. He might start taking sacks. He might start forcing things, might put in some turnover-worthy plays. So I think that's going to be it.
Yeah, I agree. And so, Mookie, you know what? You should know this now. You've been on the show a few times. You are going to be a part of the 2-minute drill. So we're going to go through the 2-minute drill. So I know, Mookie, you love this. And you love the segment that I put together, and I think everyone else does. So let's start the 2-minute drill right after this. All right, Mookie, first question in the 2-minute drill here. Who could potentially lead Seattle in receiving on Sunday outside of JSN?
Cooper Kupp.
Number 2, more carries this Sunday, Walker or Charbonnet?
Walker.
Okay. Question 3, which defender makes the biggest splash? Witherspoon, if he does play, DeMarcus Lawrence, or Julian Love?
I think Julian Love is going to get an interception on an overthrown pass by Rattler.
Okay. Over under 2.5 sacks for Seattle's defense versus Rattler?
Over. I think they get 4.
Okay. Question 5, who scores Seattle's first touchdown?
I'm going to go with Smith-Njigba getting his first touchdown of the year.
Okay. Question 6, can Seattle win if they lose the turnover battle?
Yes. I think that even if they lose the turnover battle, they can still win by just limiting the points off turnovers.
Okay. Question 7, bigger factor on Sunday, Seattle's O-line or Seattle's secondary?
Seattle's O-line.
Okay. Question 8, which rookie will flash brightest this Sunday, Zabel, Horton, or Arroyo?
I think Ray Zabel is going to do some road grading, and they're going to pound the rock as a result.
Okay.
The 2-minute drill clearly on pause right now.
Question 9. We had a tech issue there. There we go. Sorry, Mookie. I'll say it again. Who is the most important on Seattle's defense for slowing down Alvin Kamara?
Repeat that.
Who on Seattle's defense is going to be the most important to slowing down Alvin Kamara?
I think it's going to be Jaron Reed. Actually, no, Byron Murphy, the way he's playing.
Byron Murphy, like it. Okay, question 10. What's the Monday headline if Seattle wins?
If Seattle wins, I think the headline is Seahawks establish identity on the ground in impressive win over the Saints.
All right, and for everyone in the chat, I want to see what your Monday headline will be. So post what you think the title of the newspaper or articles you'll see on social media if Seattle wins this Sunday over New Orleans. So, Mookie, with that being said, let's get into some of these 12s Q&A. So we'll get into the 12s Q&A blitz here. We got 513 people in watching this stream, which is great. So if you're over on Twitter, make sure you guys put some comments on the Twitter side of things there in that chat. They do populate over here. So let's take a look and see what we've got going on in here. So first one up is from Dan. Dan, appreciate you being in the chat, man. You've been great on this, on the chat and on the show. He goes, tomorrow we get the first official injury report. It'll be interesting to find out what the surprise injured players are that popped up on Monday. Is Sundell hurt more than cramps, or who else popped up? Mookie, what are your thoughts about that first injury report coming out?
Yeah, it's just Sundell. Sundell had cramps, and you're not worried when it's Timmy in there for a few snaps. Remember, it was pretty warm in Pittsburgh, and when you're dealing with that kind of weather in that part of the country, you are going to cramp up. The one concern to watch out for is Derek Hall, because Shaq Lawson, former first-round pick of the Buffalo Bills back in 2016, he was in for tryouts today, and you don't normally have a tryout of his caliber. Now, Lawson's not an amazing player, and he's a free agent for a reason, but Mike McDonald had said on Monday that Derek Hall got nicked up a bit, and going through the All-22, I suspect that Hall got nicked up on a low block, a legal one, by Zach Frazier. This was the play where Rodgers had this weird intentional grounding / fumble thing that they eventually ruled grounding on a play that had an it took 10 minutes for them to make a ruling. But yes, Hall got pretty dinged up on that play. And even though he came back into the game for the final series, he was not moving well. So that's just a name to keep an eye on. And then they also have like a defensive back and a cornerback, I think, also on there for tryouts. So it makes me wonder a bit about anybody else getting injured in the secondary. But Sundell should be fine. But the fact that McDonald said we didn't come out as clean as we thought, I'm not going to have like my eye twitch on anything on Wednesday. But if I see a couple of guys who are back-to-back DNPs by Thursday, then I'll be a little bit more nervous. So like maybe Witherspoon can come back, but it could be at the expense of, Derek Hall's not playing. And that would be a bummer because of the three main guys of Tank, Paul, and Mafe. I think Derek Hall's been the best of those three by far, especially in the pass rush.
I would definitely agree with you. I think Hall's been the best. I also think it's interesting that they do bring Shaq Lawrence in for
Shaq Lawson. Yeah,
Shaq Lawson. Sorry. I think it's interesting because the reason I find that interesting is you have Jared Ivey and you have Connor O'Toole, who you kept on the 53, and both of them, I believe, have been healthy scratches the first 2 weeks of the season here. Does that mean they don't necessarily trust one of them to play a game in case Derek Hall is just out one game? Is this more of we might be hearing that Derek Hall is out a couple weeks, and that's why they're bringing in someone like Shaq Lawson to actually help weather that storm? But it's one to keep an eye on for sure. So we'll move on to another one for you. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. Hi, Bryce and Mookie. Hey, boys. I feel a little less worried about this being a trap game than I would have a couple years ago. I agree. This to me isn't as much of a trap game as it would have been a few years ago, I think, Mookie. I agree with X-Wing here. What are your thoughts?
I think I still got to believe it when I see it when it comes to the Seahawks team. So, like, if you really want to separate yourself from the waning years of the Carroll era, where they were absolutely prone to these types of performances, even more so than like, even the Legion of Boom teams would have these odd hiccups, but they would still win them for the most part. But they'd also win by huge margins against bad teams and even good teams. But the Seahawks teams of recent years, they have had issues against teams that they should be winning comfortably against. So again, believe it when I see it. If they beat New Orleans comfortably, and I'm talking basically the same margin against Pittsburgh, but without the shenanigans in the first half where they're trailing, then I would consider that a major upgrade over what we have generally seen over the years, where everything is coming down to the fourth quarter. So I basically, against the Saints, with the Saints having not played on the road yet, I want to see Jalen Milroe or Drew Lock in the game for mop-up duty in the final minutes.
Do you find that interesting this weekend, how they just Jalen as the third emergency QB rather than actually a third quarterback on the roster?
Yeah, I feel like after that one play that they are not as ready for the Milroe package as
Agreed.
It might be like some weeks they might use it. Like, I think he's going to be active this week, pending any injuries, of course. But
yeah,
but otherwise, like, he only just started working with the first team, so I don't expect this grand playbook coming out like in that quickly. It's going to take time as the season progresses, and we may even see it more. Like, if he's not the starter next year, I expect Milroe to have more of a more of a role in the offense because he'll have had a full offseason to understand the offense at a first-team level.
Agreed. Dan comes back in with, I stopped having birthdays 21 years ago. By the way, I'm 50. I'm getting to that point myself here, Dan. I think this might be the last one I truly celebrate.
Yes. Usually you start to feel old when the minute that you wish you were a kid again.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I'm at. So Dan also comes back with, I see a 40-point game for the Seahawks and a single-digit score from the Saints. That's would be pretty impressive. I don't know if I could see that. If I had to pick between the two, I see it more likely being a single-digit score from the Saints more than I see the Seahawks putting up 40 points on the Saints.
Yeah, I don't think the Seahawks have an explosive enough off. I know that their explosive rate is really, really impressive, but it is still a small enough sample size for me to not conclude that, wow, this is a super explosive offense. I think that they are going to be methodical to the point where they won't have like enough time to get to 40-something. But the way that they can get to 40-something, force a lot of turnovers, get a lot of short fields. I do believe that they can hold the Saints to under 10, though.
Agreed. And we have Fab in here. I'm afraid tomorrow the list of players on the injury report will be a mile long. I don't know if it'll be a mile long, Fab. I think we'll see a couple names that we probably weren't expecting. And then I think, to Mookie's point, if it's DNP to Thursday, then we're going to have a little bit more concern if it's someone quite key to it. So could be interesting. Amy comes in. I think this is referring to the trap game. She goes, it could be, but I doubt it with Mike. They won't let it happen again. Yeah, that's fair. Like, think of the Giants last year. That was a trap game for Seattle. They should have won that. I don't know if Mike will let that happen again.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's the case because honestly, I don't think they're going to play, other than maybe Carolina deeper into the season. I don't think they're going to play a team worse than New Orleans the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's fair. And Fab comes in. We need to win in Lumen no matter what. Agreed. They need a home win. They cannot go 1-2 going into that Arizona game on Thursday night. They need a nice home win and a good one, to your point, Mookie, where you're not just scraping by. And that'll set them up pretty well down the stretch, I think, here coming up early. Dan comes in with, Rattler's going to make Geno look like a good QB. Oh, jeez.
Man, I know that.
Oh, boy.
Don't let Monday be representative of like Geno's entire Seahawks career. Now, if that looked a lot like the Jets Geno. But I tell you what, you know that with Geno, he can push the ball down the field. 9 completions of 20 yards or more against the Patriots, albeit with no Christian Gonzalez. To go 0 for 13 and 3 picks tells you, I think, a little bit more about the Chargers defense and how good they are. Yes. Remember, they beat Kansas City in week 1. So, but that Chargers defense, run by Jesse Minter, who's basically a Mike McDonald disciple in a way. We know that Geno had a hard time against McDonald's defense. Now he's got to see Minter's defense twice. That was a miserable watch if you were a Geno fan or a Pete fan, or just really wanted to see Jim Harbaugh lose, in which case that was an unsuccessful hate watch.
It was. We got Islam in here with JSN is one of the 7 receivers in the NFL so far. I would say he's 7 to 5 right now. Personally, in my opinion, the way he's playing, he's definitely one of the top 7 receivers in the NFL for sure.
He's playing like a top 10 guy, and I don't want the term possession receiver to be used as some sort of derogatory, like some sort of denigrating thing. So I mentioned Doug Baldwin earlier. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think you could consider a possession receiver, but an elite level one who can get you 100-something catches. And he might not be a guy who's constantly getting 50, 60-yard bombs down the field, but you can get explosive plays, 20, 30-yard plays and still be a possession receiver. I think possession receiver, guys who know how to get open and have very low drop rates. And I think Smith-Njigba qualifies on that front.
Agreed. Johnny comes in with, I still can't believe Darnold made that spin move to avoid the sack. Yeah, that might have been Darnold's best play of the season so far, was that spin out and flip the ball to AJ Barner in the flat to get that first down, because that was pretty impressive. And that's something I think that people forget about Sam Darnold is, yes, he's not going to outrun someone 30 yards down the field, but within the confinements of that pocket and being able to get out and be athletic on boots and get out of the pocket, he's probably one of the better escape guys that way in the NFL in some respects.
Yeah, that was, to me, because that was the play before the JSN catch, which was a semi-dagger, because that play enough got him into field goal range that as long as Myers didn't screw up again, even being up by 10, I think would have killed the game off. But that was a very impressive play. And I think that they were like 6 of 14 on third down. Darnold was really good on third down, I think, in this game. And he was, to me, outstanding in the second half. The first half, he had his iffy moments, but the second half, a play like that, I think, is going to endear him to fans pretty quickly. Like we've been pretty fortunate. Like Geno has made those types of plays, and Russ has made those plays times infinity. And for Darnold to kind of continue that is great.
Agreed. Dan comes in and goes, wonder why they don't use Oots as a third down back. I'll be very plain. He's not fast enough. I love Robbie Oots, but I don't think he's fast enough. If you need to swing it to the flat, if it's 3rd and 7+, he's going to potentially get that. I love him, but I think, as a pass protector, sure. But as being a viable option out of the backfield, which you want your third down back to be to an extent, and Sharps can be that, I think that's why you don't see Robbie Oots as your third down back.
Yeah, if this was like 2003 and it's Mike Allstott, and he can be your
Yes.
every down big back, but we're not, even though the fullback is kind of making a comeback, that doesn't mean like Allstott type guys are back in business. So like Oots, I still want to see him pancaking linebackers like he did in that big Walker run.
Agreed. Jason's in here. He goes, was it like, he's talking about the run concept. So was it like the week before where the two running backs had different run types called gap or, e.g. gap or zone? Initially, Jason, I thought Walker was running a little bit more gap in the Pittsburgh game. When I got the access 22, it was a lot of inside zone instead of outside zone or wide zone they were running. So they kind of are giving, with the inside zone, there are similar principles to an extent on landmarks for a running back when it comes to inside zone, but the O-line's not really pulling or doing anything. They're just washing and clearing lanes. So it seems like they might have found a way to use the zone principles that they are, but give K9 more of a gap downhill scheme to it for him. And you saw the kind of, byproduct of it with what he did versus Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't have the PFF numbers in front of me because I know they ran more gap with Walker than they did zone in the first game. And because I think maybe statistically he's better in gap, but I believe that they should be using inside zone with him more often. Whereas I think Charbonnet is a better fit for outside zone. The more that the offense, the line and the play gets stretched out, I think the worse it could be for Walker at times in terms of like decision making or what to do, or if the play gets strung out, it's like it can turn a bad play into something worse. So inside zone allows basically like a quick hitter in the passing game. It allows them to be like more decisive and getting downhill. And if the play is blocked correctly, you end up with the plays that you saw on Sunday where Walker is just head down and he's able to get a full head of steam and showcase why he was so effective in his first year as a dangerous, explosive runner.
So what I'll tell you right now is Ken Walker had 7 zone calls in this game and 6 gap calls.
So it was basically a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
And I know Dan says I don't like PFF. It's better to just watch all 22 reviews and see for yourself. Now, in this instance, when we talk about PFF, the grading system I have issues with. But usually the stuff that they see that they identify is the same stuff that you're going to see in all 22 that's identified by not just PFF, but like Sports Info Solutions, all the other analytics-based sites. They're generally using the same information when it comes to that.
So in this case, too, with Charbonnet, he had 12 zone runs and 3 gap calls.
Yeah, and it looks like the zone, the outside zone. I'd love to see like the splits because it felt like the outside zone really was not working against
the outside zone. Did not, and it's hard to run outside zone. I'll be honest. I talked about this a little bit in the post game show. Is outside zone is very hard to run against a 3-4 defense because you have such agile players on the edge that can flow really well. Islam back in with Ben Johnson's looking like Josh McDaniels 2.0 and Caleb is looking similar to Kyler. Oh boy. That's interesting because the following up here is from Jason. He goes, why would Johnson sign with the Bears if Caleb can't do his offense? Well, I think you look at it as a rookie quarterback. He was the number 1 overall pick and you're thinking as an offensive minded coach, I can make it work there. I can make it work with that talent. You get in there and you start doing things and now you start realizing there's gaps in some of that where the talent's amazing, but the processing maybe isn't there to the extent you need it to run your offense.
I'd like to give it more than 2 games because Minnesota's defense should still be really good. And then Detroit's defense, when healthy, I think can be a top 5 unit. So against who they play this week? Dallas does not have a top 5 unit. I can definitively declare that. They can sign 10 Jadeveon Clowney clones and that's not going to be a good defense. But If he struggles against the worst defenses, then it's more about Caleb than it is about Ben.
Agreed. So Johnny comes in with, we need more edge pressure. I think we've had pretty good edge pressure through the first, like the whole front as a group has looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Boy Mafe even looks really good.
It's just finishing the plays. So like Derek Hall, I think would have had a sack if he didn't get straight bear hugged.
For holding by Fatanu there, yeah.
Yeah, that was like an egregious hold that they did call, and that's actually a great throw by Rodgers. I think it was down to amazing throw. He still got the arm, but he didn't finish the play. But you know what? It's helping create sacks for other people, and they're getting. I mean, some of those sacks were coverage sacks. I think like the last Murphy one. There was just nobody open downfield, and Murphy's able to shed his blocker eventually and get the sack. But yeah, the edge pressure. I think the sacks are going to come in due time. And they've been able to play Kyler Murray well pretty historically. Play Kyler Murray well historically speaking. So I think that they can get some sacks going the next couple of weeks.
Jason James in here goes, it's a simple answer for me. Charbonnet is better on turf and Walker is better on grass.
I've never thought of it that way. I might have to go to Pro Football Reference and see if you're onto something there. Might have to see if I could crack the case. But remember, Walker's biggest runs of his career, I think, were both on turf. It was the Chargers game, and then I think his very first touchdown was at New Orleans in the Dome for 69 yards. So
Jason's back. There you go. Jason's back in here with, my key to this game is Kubiak not getting in his own way with cute plays, wide runs to the short side. Yeah, no, I think Kubiak's starting to get the rhythm and the consistency and sequencing of how this offense is going to work. I think we saw it in the second half really pick up in the Pittsburgh game, and I think we'll see that carry over this week going into that one. Amy's in here. Jay gets to stay for another week.
Yeah, he does. And a point about Kubiak, I might have been the minority being fine with the 4th and 1 pass. But the play design, even though Barner, I think, was open, when you're asking Oots to cut block 2 or one of those 2, you're still going to have a free rusher. So like that needed to be blocked a lot better. I think if it's going to be a 4th one, don't roll out to the left side.
Correct. That's my biggest gripe with it, is don't put that much pressure on your quarterback. Like if you're going to call a play action, go to his front side. And, run the back. Like I would have ran Oots in a chip to the flat so you can still get it out to him and let Barner, run a bit farther down the field on like a flag or sail route. So we got Dogzilla in here with Run the Rock. Misfit in here, Pound the Rock. And Dogzilla, appreciate it, man. $10 donation. Thank you so much. Great show, everyone. Thanks. Appreciate all of you guys being in here, the 566 of you. It's been awesome. Mookie and me will be in here for a little bit longer. Let's have, here we go. We got some headlines, Mookie. I really like this. Let's look at some of these headlines. So Space comes in with Seahawks finally win one at home. Misfit, Seahawks actually good. Who knew? Jason's got one. Headline is home field back. Ooh, that's a really good one. Interesting. I think that'll be very, very dependent on how the score of that game is, or how many false starts are incurred by the Saints.
That's a bigger thing because let's face it, if you watch the 49ers Saints game, that was like a huge 49ers fan base in New Orleans. And who wouldn't want to spend a weekend in New Orleans? But I don't expect Saints fans to take over Lumen Field at any point. Yeah, as I said I said it on social media and also on Ryan McMillan's show on Hawks Zone Rundown, that the Seahawks chance in Pittsburgh, that was awesome. Because, they've won there before, I think in 2019. But just to hear that at the end, like we always bemoan the opposing fans coming in and making the loud cheers at Lumen. But we have to acknowledge that the Seahawks fan base has grown so much that what you end up having is when they went on the road, you can hear those Seahawks chants in stadiums that previously you would be lucky to have 10 Seahawks fans. And it meant a lot in Pittsburgh because we know in Super Bowl 40, you were lucky to find 5,000 Seahawks fans in that building.
Dan Conroy, when does the Rodgers DK divorce happen? I don't know if there will be a divorce. I think unless the biggest thing I'll say is I think somewhat of both of their personalities might work a little bit in, to the advantage. And I don't think DK's done anything that's annoyed Rodgers. I think he's done everything he's been asked to do, which DK's done always. He's been very good that way. I think Rodgers is going to get frustrated with Calvin Austin a little bit more, as we saw with his loosing it on him for causing the interception by Kendrick. By the way, Kendrick played awesome. For a guy that's only been here a few weeks to pick up this defense and play as many snaps as he did in dime and nickel, I was extremely impressed with him.
I was blown away. I did not see that coming because the Rams tape is ugly. But maybe he's more comfortable in the slot than he is as an outside corner. But yeah, that was great. He should have had 2 picks. One that he just straight dropped. And then the second one, Calvin Austin did an excellent job creating as much traffic as possible and basically running his route into Freiermuth. I think he basically broke up a touchdown because I think Freiermuth probably catches that. And instead, it ends up being a tip and Kendrick Johnny on the spot, another huge play. So you love to see that because without Spoon, without Eamon Warrior, some of these guys have got to step up. And he did his job well, and so did Josh Jobe in extended playing time. Like Josh Jobe, he is like the new DJ Reed on this team. And unlike DJ Reed a few years ago, I'm hoping that if, at this rate, they could actually keep Josh Jobe around.
Yeah, I agree. I think Josh Jobe, I think, again, I'll still say this. I don't know if Wolin's here. He's still so up and down. We'll have to see the consistency. But if Josh Jobe stays consistent this year and how he came on last year, I think there could be a situation where next year we see our top 3 corners or maybe Devin Witherspoon, Josh Jobe, Kendrick, 4, and Nehemiah Pritchett, and they draft somebody. And they let Wolin still walk in free agency because the money's just not something they're willing to pay. But we got Slarty in here with a $5 donation. Appreciate it. What do you guys think about how the Giants used Jackson Dart? Brought him in on some second and shorts to run the option. I don't have a problem with that. I think you get a little bit, Jackson Dart, I think they're trying to get him more and more involved in the offense so he can eventually take over at some point this season and they can kind of start moving in that direction with their franchise quarterback. Again, I don't have a problem with it. I, again, think there's ways to use Milroe. But the one thing I'll say, and I've said this on my post-game show, was Mike McDonald is a very analytical film breakdown. We're attacking for a purpose type of coach. And I think Clint Kubiak's kind of wired the same way as an offensive coordinator. So I think to Mookie's point earlier, until you have a package and Milroe's comfortable running with the ones and it's really tested out, I don't know if we'll see it a lot yet. But that is a way to use him, is in second and short runs and not on QB draws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Dart, and the Giants situation is totally different. I mean, they were playing Dart a lot in preseason and even a little bit with the ones. And he's a first-round pick. He's not a third-round pick. That Giants schedule is brutal. And like Russ might have turned back the clock in week 2, but it was dreadful in week 1. So like the odds of you getting him playing the classics like against Dallas every week are pretty low. So sooner rather than, I think at some point they're going to end up just starting Dart. But might be deeper into the season. Like that performance by Russ on Sunday holds back any cause of let's start Dart now. But like when the season is obviously lost with their schedule, then I think they're just going to turn the keys over to Dart and like, Russ, you've done your job. But now it's time to see what Dart has. Is he our future? With Milroe, totally different story because he just wasn't getting any run with the ones. So they kind of knew that this was going to be a year where any involvement that he has with the first team offense is decidedly minimal.
Yeah, and I can see everyone still talking about the DK thing. I think DK is still getting on track with this offense down there in Pittsburgh. I know he didn't have a great performance. I still think DK has the same issues he had in Seattle. I don't think those are going to go away anytime soon. So I think you'll see DK. He'll have some good weeks. He'll have some bad weeks. I don't know if there'll be a divorce because Rodgers is only going to be there for the 1 year. I think it's more about what will DK look like with Will Howard or whoever their next quarterback is in Pittsburgh. But Mookie, before we get out of here, final drive, score predictions. What is your score prediction for this game? And everyone in the chat, put your score prediction in as well. I'll let you go first here, Mookie.
Oh, boy. Okay, so this could be famous last words because I imagine a lot of you who are still in your survivor leagues, including the Field Gulls one, might be picking the Seahawks this week. If you're not picking Buffalo over Miami, you're probably picking this game. I believe Seattle is the second most predicted team so far. We still got a few days to go before every pick is locked in, but I think that Seattle is going to, unlike these last couple of weeks, get a lead early and then build on that lead. So like they got a lead early against Pittsburgh and then just watched it disappear mostly through their own doing. And then they were able to rally back and pull away late. I think that on this occasion, it might be a little bit ugly the first couple of drives, but they're going to get like it's a 10-0 start, and then it'll turn into like a 14-point lead close to halftime. And they're able to maintain that and increase it slightly in the second half. So I'm going to go with, say, a 31-13 kind of win where maybe the field goal at the end is window dressing. But I think that Seattle is going to be able to run the ball effectively, maybe get, let's say, 130, 140 yards on the ground. They'll hit some explosives. I, again, would like to see Horton involved more in the offense, like that touchdown that he scored, where I think they're both running crosses him and JSN. Great play because it puts safety in conflict. Do I go with JSN? Do I go with Horton? Well, he went with one, and then Ramsey can't get over to Horton in time, and you end up with Darnold making a great throw as he's taking a shot. So I think the Seahawks are a better team, and they're going to show it and win, I think, reasonably comfortably. You know, it's one where the Saints might be hanging around down 14 and the touchdown makes a one-possession game, but in reality, they're not really in it because they just don't really have the firepower or the talent level to hang around with teams on the road where they're at a significant disadvantage.
So I'm a little bit different, Mookie. I think Seattle wins 23-17. I think they're going to ride the home field energy at Lumen. They're going to cause Spencer Rattler some problems. The defense will generate pressure against the shaky Saints O-line. Charbonnet and Walker will control the ground game. JSN continues to be the go-to target, and Seattle takes advantage of the Saints' red zone struggles to secure a balanced and a hard-fought win. The reason I think it's 23-17 is I just don't – even after this game, 31-17, it took the weird, funky special teams blunder of the Pittsburgh Steelers to really kind of swing that momentum. So I'm still kind of hesitant to see them actually really establish themselves like a 31-17 true, just complete game start to finish. So that's why I think it's 23-17. I think it's probably like 23, 10 with a couple minutes left in the game, and the Saints score some, weird touchdown there to make it look a little bit closer. So I'm kind of in your ballpark there, but I think the final score will be 23-17.
Yeah, I wouldn't be happy if they only won by 6, but I'd be happy with a win because, again, you got a short week coming. You don't want to drop this game for 2 reasons. One, the Pittsburgh game, as cool as it was to win, counts for very little in the standings in terms of tiebreakers because you're beating an AFC team. But one, you can't drop NFC tiebreakers because that's cost Seattle already. And then two, you can't drop the quote-unquote easier game before you get to the tougher division game against Arizona, especially since Arizona could easily be 3-0 but by the end of the weekend because they're healthy and the 49ers are not. So it's like you don't want to create separation against you and then make Thursday night a virtual must-win because I don't think they can afford to be like 3 back without a tiebreaker right away. So like you got to win this game and then see how the rest of the division plays out before you head into Thursday.
Totally agree. And Mookie, I want to say thanks again, man, for coming on the show here. Don't forget, everyone, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. I am so close to 1,000 subscribers. And once I hit that, it'll open up a lot more doors for me with this channel. So I appreciate everyone that already is supporting and all the comments. Keep those coming, guys, on the videos when they're posted on YouTube. I love interacting and having back and forth conversations with all of you in there. It's been awesome. You can find the show over on Field Gulls and on the website there. And Mookie, what do we got going on at Field Gulls over the next week here coming up to kick off on Sunday?
Well, we got an all-22 breakdown from Alexandre Castro. We already did one about the Seahawks rookies, and now there'll be one about the game itself. So always interested to read his insights and breakdowns. Obviously, we'll have a game preview for the Saints game and a couple other things related to game coverage. And I might do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the statistical observations with the Clint Kubiak offense thus far in terms of personnel usage, in terms of their play action rate, and all that good stuff. If you like numbers, then this article might be for you. But thanks for having me on. We weren't planning to do this State of the Hawks Combine on Tuesday, but just schedules kind of changed up. But it's always great to do this. It's even better to do it on a win. And the next time we do have State of the Hawks, hopefully we're talking about a 3-1 Seahawks team that is no worse than tied for first in the NFC West.
That's what I'm hoping for too, Mookie. And over here on the Hawk side, got Griffin Sturgeon coming on tomorrow. So that show will be out late tomorrow night or Friday. We're going to talk about the defense, really get Griffin's opinions on how the Seahawks defense has played through the first 2 weeks. And are there any areas that are still concerning him? And then on top of that, I have a Hawks film breakdown with Dan Viens. It'll be out on Friday morning, discussing all the explosive plays that have led to the Hawks being the number 2 ranked team when it comes to explosive plays. Sunday night, again, Seahawks post-game live show with myself. Monday, live Seahawks Aftermath. I know we didn't have that this past Monday due to my work conflicts, but it will be back next week with Michael Thompson. And then Wednesday next week, don't forget, everyone make sure they've got it checked off on their calendar. The next Seahawks Syndicate show will be out, and it'll be us doing a preview and breakdown of what's occurred and a preview of that Arizona Cardinal game on the Thursday. So there's a lot of stuff coming up over the next couple weeks here on this show, so make sure you guys have clicked that notification button so you don't miss it. Other than that, Mookie, let's get out of here. Have a good night, everyone. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.